Governance of Artificial Intelligence. This course is offered by Nalsar University of Law in the NPTEL platform. We are in week 2, session 10. This is the last session of this week 2. The topic we are going to discuss is global AI governance, architectures, visions, and future trends. So, global AI governance, we talk in terms of architectures, visions, and future trends, taking into account AI governance, global policy, and future scenarios. So the overview, it's a world at crossroads. AI is shaping economy, society, and internationalists in an unprecedented way. We all know that. Global governance systems might adapt or risk being overtaken by technology that they seek to regulate. So we look at three scholarly frameworks that frame the challenge. Mass on governance of architecture. We discussed about his work, or we based his work in an earlier session as well. Saitra and Rogerson on future scenarios. They envisaged 4 future scenarios, taking into account climate change also. The shift on governance dimensions. Central question is, how do we govern a technology whose future contours remain deeply uncertain and contested? And then, is the window of opportunity to get this right is wide open, or will it be closed soon, or it may not remain for long? Stakes, why AI governance matters now. We talked about the ethical issues, military AI getting integrated into warfare. Of course, I also mentioned about the conflict between Open AI and the US Defense Department on how do we integrate AI into military AI, and then still ensuring that it is done in such a way that it is not AI which takes over and then does things. So the challenges to be, there are critical challenges for global security and international law. And then, of course, the recent controversy of Anthropic over, and then the whole idea of military AI driving the warfare, integrated warfare without human supervision or without ethical guidelines and framework is a major issue now. Not only that, advanced foundation modules reproduce past AI challenges at scale and reduce novel systematic risk. Not every day, almost every day, we hear something about it. Irreversible societal impacts are already underway. After 25 years or 10 years, they may become very intense, unresolvable, too conflict oriented. So, we need both vertical capability improvement and horizontal proliferation are likely to continue. Or, in other words, the societal impacts on account of the foundation models, on account of improved models as well as better performing widespread use of algorithms will be a risk. So if we fail to act, it will be an enormous negative cost to societies across the globe. Central argument, AI governance is a matter of deliberate human choice. It is not a technological inevitability, or it is not something which technology decides the road on which we have to travel. It is tempting but wrong to declare that AI future is either too speculative or too inevitable to plan for. So we have at our disposal conceptual, legal, and institutional tools to shape the development and global impact. Legal and political decisions made today will determine how we are able to govern AI effectively for decades. So the social technical framework remains as technologies and societies mutually shape one another rather than technology deciding or determining what society will do or how society should take the technology and travel with the technology. So the responsibility before us is how to choose well, how to choose, and then whether to choose soon, and then how to choose together. So there is a window of opportunity which is already available. As we discussed, the window of opportunity may be small, it is shrinking, but then we need to effectively use it instead of not doing anything or thinking that the problem will get solved by himself. So there are three analytical framework: socio-technical change, focusing on the affordances of uses of AI, not just novelty or scattered application; governance disruption on account of AI; regime complexity, which we have already discussed; how individual AI regimes are embedded in a broader institutional architecture. Each framework addresses a different dimension: what to regulate, how law itself is being disrupted, and how institutions interrelate, cooperate, and are in conflict. So taken together, they offer tools to improve the efficacy, resilience, and coherence in AI governance proposals. Socio-technical framework focuses on artifacts, activities, and actors, and the largely legally notable social changes they create. Six classic regulatory rationale to evaluate why changes may or must be regulated. We have discussed some of them even earlier. Helps to decide when to regulate. Both premature rules and harmful wait and see approach. The classic Collins dilemma, also the problem of pacing problem, identifies the AI stack, compute infrastructure, training deployment, downstream users and harms. Each layer presents a distinct regulatory surface with different control points and governance levers. Supports triage, tracing, targeting, timing, and tailoring of governance instruments. So, what is triage? Triage means in a critical situation in which there are multiple needs but the resources are very limited, a decision has to be made to allocate the resources to the most demanding need on hand rather than to distribute it equitably or rather than to distribute it randomly across. So triage is a decision, or triage means you take a decision on allocating resources, rather the available critical limited resources, factoring the critical need, factoring the priorities to which the resources have to be deployed, and also factoring which is the most important issue to be addressed. So, if we understand triage, it also means that governance instruments have to be factored in to take this triage issue into account. AI transforms law, governance disruptions, new technological challenge, legal substances become ambiguous, under-inclusive, law creation are transformed into unilateral AI used by some state actors erode political foundations of international law. For example, use of AI for military purposes by state actors, or use of AI by state actors directly or indirectly to influence elections, and then use of AI by state actors working together with by stealth with others, by indulging, by using them for malicious purposes, and then by subverting cyber security and all. This creates pressures towards governance deployment, amendment, new laws, or analytical adoption. Risk. Policymakers may prefer legal uncertainty over with ill-suited metaphors or inapt analogies. So, if they think on those lines, then they won't be able to address the issue at all. Opportunity. Some cautious AI deployments could strengthen international lawmaking and enforcement. Design flexibility mechanisms are key for preempting premature future technological pressure on governance regimes. Regime complexity, which we have discussed, we are bringing another layer to here now. The five analytical steps: origins, viability and design, topology of the regime complex, drivers of evolution, consequence of complexity, strategies for efficacy, resilience and coherence. So, what are the trade offs? Comprehensive centralized regime versus overlapping fragmented regime, which is preferable, but both of them cannot be decided to be equally superior. So, neither extreme is obviously superior, each has got functional trade offs as well as the other pluses and minuses. The framework also reveals gaps, shortcomings, and latent conflicts in legal rules and institutional activities. Goal is to improve, preserve the coherence of overall AI governance architecture. So, to understand that, we take into account global governance, AI, and climate change. Global governance we discussed earlier, AI governance we discussed earlier, climate change are deeply entangled. Both AI and climate change are global public goods. We talked about it. Governance cannot succeed through national action, global action, cooperative action. Coming together to solve the address common issues is required. AI exacerbates climate change, energy demands, resource use by also being proposed as part of the solution. Global governance structures pivot the analysis from anarchical society to world state. So, public goods theory unifies the discussion. Non-rival, non-excludable benefits require collective action. So, addressing the climate change, addressing the global governance, addressing the challenge of AI, need a non-rival, non-excludable benefit requiring collective action. But then there are free rider problems and then tragedy of commons are there. Free rider problems come when some states which are not party to any treaty or party to negotiations benefit from the larger efforts, benefit from the larger outcomes without contributing anything. Or free riders are only or beneficiaries, not contributors, nor problem solvers. Then tragedy of the commons again is based on the classic idea of tragedy of commons when shared resources are not used wisely, but every stakeholder want to maximize his or her utility on the common resource, resulting in the tragedy of the commons, which means that the resource gets degraded, overexploited, and then it gets totally unusable instead of taking in terms of the long-term interest of preserving the commons for the welfare of all. So, in both domains, global governance, AI, and climate change, these are the free rider problems and tragedy of commons. Anarchical society or anarcho capitalism, where private sectors dominate, governance is contractual and commodified. Decentralized norm based cooperation, English school of the international relations, shared norms and mutual recognition with formal enforcement, formalized region based cooperation, neoliberal institutionalism, which is again operationalized through various other institutions like WTO and others, multilateral regimes and institutions, lower transaction cost and enabled cooperation. In fact, the post-World War world has seen a greater use of formalized regime-based cooperation in almost addressing all the major issues, whether it is climate change, nuclear proliferation, law of seas, or biodiversity, or desertification, or preserving shared resources. And these multilateral regimes and institutions, they lower transaction cost, enable cooperation. So Model 3 gives a viable formalized regime-based cooperation. World state, again a cosmopolitan governance, centralized supranational authority with perceived power. Each model discussed different incentives and capacities. Real world often governance blends elements from several models simultaneously. So the four model scenario under 2045, under a Texas sun, anarcho-capitalism plus high emissions, unrestricted AI acceleration, private geoengineering, extreme inequality, militarized AI. Scenario 2, strength and unity, English school norms, talk in terms of regimes, cooperation over maximizing, trying to maximize each one's benefit, medium emissions, restrict emissions, AI restrict in terms of risks and capabilities, deliberative cooperation, environmental justice focus to address climate change. Scenario 3, New Venice. You all know Venice is a city that lit floats. So under that, new liberal institutionalism, medium emissions, rapid AI acceleration resulting in formal AI safety regimes, and then climate computing systems. Scenario 4, the planetary intelligence division, a world state and low emissions, controlled intensive AI, unified governance, carbon capture, AI for sustainability. These scenarios are tools for imagination, strategic reflections. These are not predictions. These are not predictions, or these are not something like this will happen, scenario 1 and 4 will happen like that. These are more like, building multiple scenarios, multiple pathways, and then multiple approaches or multiple ways that problem can be addressed. If these are the scenarios, what solution you would need, or if this is could be the scenario that can happen, what institutional mechanism is needed to address that. But each future in the four, there are winners, there are losers, there are distributional consequences, and then the benefits and cost, who shares the benefit, who bears the cost, also varies significantly. Under the Texas sun, global governance collapsed, nation states yield to multinational corporations, AI races without any restraint, move fast and break things. Climate change worsens to extreme heat, desertification, mass displacement. Private firms deploy military AI and atmospheric geoengineering for paying customers. Stability is bought, not governed. Access to livable commodity, climate becomes a commodity which is being traded. So, unchecked AI plus market failure plus climate neglect can result in catastrophic inequality. This is under a Texan sun. You know why the name a Texas sun is given here. Strategic in unity, norms-based cooperation. Peripheral states unite to form the UN Cosmopolitan Forum, bringing cooperative norms from ground up. Anti-militaristic ethos spread. Major powers abandon zero-sum AI rivalry. They tend to cooperate. AI development is deliberately slowed under multinational research coordination with shared objectives to minimize the harms and then risks. Medium emissions trajectory is being projected through voluntary cooperation rather than the coercion. And then China's Environmental Justice and Transfer Initiative redistributes climate burdens across the continent. So norm building plus trust plus AI restraint is equal to moderate but more equitable climate outcomes. Or in this, equitable climate outcomes come with better AI governance. New Venice formalized regime cooperation, old Venice lost behind rising seas, ocean bound sovereign crisis ships host international AI summits, Taiwan and other AI racing powers advance rapid AI development with strong UN oversight. UN framework is developed for AI accelerated science like black zones halted, green zones for climate AI, Earth computing system based upon megacity scale infrastructure to monitor, simulate, and predict the global climate, medium emissions through international regime compliance, not shared values, competitive states plus strong institutions plus rapid AI, a controlled progress with risks managed, or we are managing risks by integrating the competitive states with strong institutions and rapid AI. Then comes the planetary intelligence, where a world state takes care of that. Elected leadership, planetary coordinate all the major AI projects, international carbon capture program, and AI-based climate check technology achieves lower pathway. New Delhi's skies are clear. Previously unthinkable clean air becomes reality under unified governance globally. AI is repurposed from weapon to tool, serving regenerative infrastructure and climate justice. Illustrates catastrophic shock plus world government plus control AI, transformative and plus but hard won sustainability. So these are the four scenarios envisaged by the authors. Key dimensions of AI governance and typology. Dimension 1, centralization versus decentralization, robust versus minimalist monitoring, adaptive versus enduring regulation, private leadership versus shared control, broad versus targeted social scope. These dimensions are not independent governance regimes but bundle them in particular combinations. So, these dimensions can be put together in different combinations and then we can develop a global AI governance typology. Aviation model, highly centralized international civil aviation organization, robust enforcement, enduring regulation, technocratic government, targeted safety scope, climate change model, significantly decentralized Paris Agreement. We discussed about IPCC in an earlier one. Minimalist enforcement. Paris Agreement is binding, but minimalist enforcement, adaptive targets, flexibility is there, shared control is there, mixed in scope. Organic food model, decentralized, no inconsistent enforcement, standards are there, third party auditing is there, private sector dominated, but moderate in scope. So, open source software model where it is highly decentralized development, collaborative transparency, adaptive best practices, distributive leadership, and then broad society scope. Or open source software model is a bottoms up collaborative one, highly decentralized, there is no central agency or authority, but then collaborative transparency based upon agreed values and then shared norms. Adaptive best practices built upon the previous experiences. Leadership is shared and then distributed. Broad social scope is built into account. So AI governance mostly resembles the climate change model, high level principles, national flexibility, and then weak enforcement. Each model offers us lessons and warnings for AI governance design. The problem with climate change model is its weak enforcement makes it one that will look nice in paper, but then in practice it will not be very effective. So, centralization trends. International efforts focus on principle level consensus, not binding. National governance is primarily divergent approach. EU AI is a centralized horizontal regulation with AI office, mandatory requirements, large fines, and then EU setting up specialized offices to deal with that. US thinks in terms of largely decentralized, no specific federal framework. Sector specific frameworks are there, but then voluntary frameworks are also decided by NIST and then AIRMF. So, National AI Safety Institutes signal preferences for national control supported by international coordination. So, we looked at the models, CERN like research bodies too, IAEA like compliance mechanisms too, IPCC like advisory panels. Monitoring, enforcement, private control. This again, I need not elaborate in detail. You can easily understand that. Facing problem, we have to come back to this again. Adaptive versus enduring resolution. Facing problem, technology develops faster than governance institutions can adapt. Generative AI in 2022 blindsided most policymakers who had been working on LC for years because nobody anticipated these developments. New concepts emerged overnight: frontier models, multimodal systems, red teaming, general purpose AI, and then today we are talking of much more things like AI agents, agentic AI, and whatnot. So the technology emerges with newer concepts, newer practical tools. Industry needs regulatory certainty while governance needs flexibility to remain relevant. UAA Act includes provisions for updating prohibited high risk, but major reforms will become harder post enactment. This again is a major issue. How do we address this? Decentralized, lower inertia governance bodies empowered to experiment and iterate rapidly, or thinking in terms of regulatory sandboxes being applied to different issues but on a decentralized scale. Technical ethics versus broad societal scope, we have already discussed that, so I need not go into it again and again. Wildcards and critical junctures. So the AI trajectory itself is highly unknown. Steady progress, punctured leaps, or rapid acceleration all remain possible. So AI can make steady progress. Yes, progress is 10%, 15%, like that. Punctuated leaps. Punctuated leaps is similar to what we see in evolution. Or when the leaps come and then there is a great acceleration. So punctuated leaps is not a linear one. So leaps occur, further evolution happens, again a punctuated leap again occurs, another set of evolution goes forward. And then rapid acceleration is also possible. So a major focusing event which could be catastrophic or a major risk like electoral disruption by deepfakes, cyber attack, cyber security becoming a battleground, and then countries using AI related tools for harming other countries. In fact, this again is a major issue. Military incidents or unanticipated AI risk incidents resulting in unanticipated consequences. They could reshape governance because countries then will be sensitized to think in terms of governance, global governance. Global cooperation or contestation, China will heavily influence international AI governance in the years to come. 2025 Paris Action Summit showed brittleness. UAE and UK distance from the voluntary commitments. Whereas in 2026, almost all the countries agreed to this statement. So, progress on lethal autonomous weapons ban stalls as leading military powers reject binding constraints. Or everyone wants to have the freedom to do research without any supervision or without any centralized body looking into ethical, humanitarian law issues or the coordinating issues. Future shifts, changes in public AI literacy, civil society capacity, or large technical capacity can open up new policy windows when we talk of wild cards and critical junctures ahead. Strategic governance, which we can build upon the strategic intelligence thinking that are effective, resilient, and coherent. Social technical stack to identify the right regulatory target, compute, training, deployment, use form, design flexibility mechanisms, strengthen the international institutions from advisory panels to monitoring bodies while maintaining national implementation capacity, enhance public participation, invest in AI literacy, civil society capacity, and interdisciplinary exercise to broaden governance beyond technical elites and technical perspectives on ethics. So it's time to choose. It's not a technical pursuit, it's a political, legal, moral choice. We are living an epochal moment. Window to lay robust governance foundation is open but shrinking. All the three scholarly frameworks, one message is consistent, deliberate, informed action is needed now. The 4 to 45 scenarios show that outcomes range from catastrophic inequity to planetary flourishing. The difference is governance. Or governance can make or break a lot in this. We are empowered to change the trajectory of AI, to refuse unwelcome fakes, and to determine the futures we hand to future generations. So, as Moss says in his book 2025, let us meet it head on together. Or, in other words, when it comes to AI governance, the time to choose has already come or is about to come very soon. So these are the basic references. And then in this references, we have highlighted some of the references from other literature like climate change also. Particularly Scott Barrett's 2000 work is a classic work which advocates why cooperate have to solve common problems, because the incentive to supply public goods is there, so cooperation is must. And then in this paper, we have primarily drawn upon the first three papers: The Architecture of Global AI Governance by Moss, Citra and Rogerson's 2026 paper, Four Visions on Future of AI Global Governance, Future Trends in Global AI Governance in the Handbook on Global AI Governance of Artificial Intelligence. We have also relied upon the other work as well. So with this, we are completing week 2, session 10. Thank you.